Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk some boxing. So, this particular video is about how to deal with someone who has superior height and has long reach. Some people have really excellent jabs. Austin Trout has an excellent jab. And in this fight against Canelo, Austin Trout has both the height and the reach advantage. And he's using it to the best capacity. But see, there's a lot of things people don't understand in the sport of boxing. Boxing is mathematical. It's all about angles. I'll say it again. Mathematics is the key to boxing. The only way your height and reach always works is if you're at the same angle in the same plane with your opponent. So for instance, if I'm taller than you, I'm 6 feet tall, and my reach is longer than you, I got a decent reach, all right, about 70 inches. Then if you're standing directly in front of me, note, if you're standing directly in front of me, it means that if I throw up my jab to you, I'll hit you, okay, before you hit me, especially if I have a sense of timing. Now here, Canelo is actually slightly off from Austin Trout. He's not really standing directly in front of him. In fact, Canelo had been inching to the right of Trout. Trout couldn't see it. And therefore, Canelo could see straight down the center of Trout. And Trout didn't realize that. Now, what he does is he goads Trout into throwing a jab. All right? That's why when you're dictating and you have control. So how does he goad Trout into that? He taps. It's called a touch jab. He touch jabs Trout's glove to make sure he's within range while provoking a response from Trout. So Trout will jab, and when Trout jabs, Canelo counters with a straight right. What I tried to explain to people without saying it too much is that if say for instance, Austin Trout there pumped a really nice sharp jab, watch that. The momentum of him pumping that strong jab means that his weight sort of rocked to the front foot. Okay, he tried to stay in balance while he was throwing the jab, but his weight would rock to the front. And while Canelo's countering him, he actually rocks right into Canelo's straight right. So he's actually leaning into Canelo slightly on the front foot when Canelo counterpunches him. And that's what really knocks him down and throws off his equilibrium. All right? And Canelo's slightly on the inside of Trout. You look at his foot. His foot gets to the inside of Trout right there, and that's how he's able to counterpunch him. Think of Marcos Maidana versus Floyd Mayweather, the second fight, in the third round of the fight. At the end of the third round, Marcos Maidana catches Floyd Mayweather with a beautiful straight right. Why? Because Marcos Maidana slightly shifts the angle, slipping the counter right that Floyd throws. He's slightly to the outside of the counter right, and then he's able to throw his straight right straight down the pike. Now here, Canelo doesn't do that. He's actually on the inside of the jab. Okay, he's on the inside of the jab because he shifts himself to the inside of Trout, which is risky when you go to the inside of the southpaw. But if the southpaw hasn't picked up that you're slightly to the inside of him, that's called special effects. You're creeping in on the inside. Canelo was circling to Trout's weak side, which would have been his right hand. Okay, he kept on circling Trout, circling, and then he just kind of froze up, and it seemed as though he was stationary. But every second, Canelo's inching in on Trout. You got to watch the footwork. See, slightly inches in with the jab, slightly inches in again. So he inches in. If you have the shorter reach, you have to inch in on your opponent, right? Everybody knows this, right? But Canelo, he's tricky. He'd inch in, but then stay back on the outside periphery of Trout's reach. So there he goes, inch in right there, right? He'll inch in and he'll inch back. Watch this. Inch in, inch back. Inch in, there you go. Just watch the footwork, right? As he inches in, Trout inches back. Inches in, and then Trout steps forward as Canelo's inching in. Watch this. And he doesn't realize Canelo's down a different angle. Catches him. All right? It's all about angles in boxing. All about angles in boxing. It's all about timing in boxing. It's all about dictating. When you dictate, the other guy has to react. And Canelo dictated so that Austin Trout actually reacted by throwing a jab. Okay? Boxing is very complex, but it's kind of simple at the same time, right? So when you're dealing with a guy that's taller than you, you have to get closer to him. But you have to do things that he's not really paying attention to, not realizing he's getting closer to you. That's the whole key. In martial arts, I learned about this in Shidoro because I'm an in-close fighter, right? In Shidoro, which is not like Shotokan, you're actually making smaller movements. So how do I get my opponent closer to me? I inch in on him. All right. So that's what Canelo was basically doing. Is inching in on Trout. Trout doesn't realize he's inching in on him, and changing the distance to his preferred range. Canelo is able to do this by goading Trout and keeping Trout occupied, blocking his jab, just keeping him occupied with a touch jab. And that's why there are different kinds of jabs. A touch jab can keep your opponent occupied and distracted from what you're actually going to do, as well as help you to find the range of your opponent. So that's what Canelo was basically doing with that touch jab. All right, so it's all about angles. So it doesn't matter how long a guy's reach is or how tall he is. Once you know his reach, that's established, you can stay on the periphery of his reach, and then you can adjust the angle of your approach to him to benefit yourself. In the case of the southpaw, Canelo will need to throw his lead right. So he inched on the inside of Trout and then threw the lead right, inching in on Trout. See, there's a lot of things to boxing. That's why when people talk about Errol Spence and Danny Garcia and Mikey Garcia, and Errol Spence has a superior reach and height, it doesn't mean shit if you don't know how to use it. And furthermore, like I said before, there's a lot to this. I could actually give away the blueprint of what's going on with Errol Spence and how to beat Errol Spence. I could give away that blueprint. It's still up to Mikey to execute it, and it's also up to Errol Spence to be able to execute and nullify that. So it doesn't really matter what I say. If they haven't done that, if they hadn't done it in training camp, they're not going to do it now, right? All right, so let's keep it moving. So this is just from a different angle so you can see it. You know, they're landing it straight down the pipe. Beautiful shot. But what beknownst to you guys, Trout couldn't see it. All right, I'm gonna show you it again. Watch it again. This is in slow motion, so you can see from a different angle. But the way our Trout's seeing it, he didn't even see that punch coming. He's smiling because he realized Canelo tricked him. So there, Canelo feinted also a jab. He feinted a jab, then he went down a different line. Look at Troy, throw his jab, boom. Canelo actually split the jab, actually. He was onto the outside of the jab. I didn't realize that. He split the jab and went straight down the pike. So you change up the angle of approach on your opponent. That's what makes a difference. Erislandy Lara, superior reach, again, slightly taller than Canelo. Very long guy, beautiful jabber, all right? Just so people will understand, Danny Jacobs ain't really got no advantage against Canelo. Canelo's dealt with this type of opponent before. Slick, skilled, throwing a long jab. He's seen that opponent now 3 times. He's seen it with Austin Trout, Floyd Mayweather, and then he saw it with Erislandy Lara, okay? This is not an opponent Canelo's not familiar with. Now, Alfredo Angulo will use the high guard. So one of the other things is, if you might be, just to be careful, you use the high guard to be able to deal with a taller, slicker opponent. So Sugar Ray Leonard used the high guard to walk to Tommy Hearns. Canelo used the high guard against against Erislandy Lara, same way as Angulo is doing. Okay, and in the end, this is the success that Angulo had. Look at this. So Angulo kept on chasing down Erislandy Lara, just chasing him down relentlessly here, as you can see, walking him down. Lands those body shots. Erislandy Lara trying to get out of there, but Angulo again traps him. Watch the beautiful body work. Beautiful body work. Okay, Lara's a little bit elusive, but you can see Angulo just keeping the heat on him. All right. There's that body shot. Now let me show you what happened with Canelo. Canelo was doing the very same thing. A lot of people saying Canelo wasn't cutting off the ring. Oh yeah, really? You really serious about that? Look, he lands a straight right there. He's cutting off the ring all the time on Erislandy Lara. Right? Just that Canelo, he gonna get that lead right in without having to lean in and commit to it. See? All right. So that Angulo was doing, Canelo was doing the same thing Angulo was doing. Now here's Angulo catching Erislandy Lara with a left hook, and that's what put him down. As he was trying to wheel out, Angulo caught him with the left hook because he was within range. Again, the taller, longer fighter, yeah, but if you keep the pressure on a taller, longer fighter, you get results. Canelo did something like the same. He did a right uppercut as Lara was wheeling out of the way. All right. So one of the things in boxing is timing. Here, what we're going to see in effect with a nice jab thrown by Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., but it's countered by Canelo. Canelo's very good at countering the jab, a la Floyd Mayweather, a pull counter. All right, pull counter. That is, now you're pulling back, but you're not going straight back. You're actually going back at an angle to catch the guy as you counter him. So you got what's called a pull counter. All right. Again, Chavez Jr. has a longer reach than Canelo is using his jab to keep him away at bay. Didn't work. Floyd Mayweather shows you the high guard and how to pick off shots. So here against Conor McGregor, who had a ridiculously long reach, 78-inch reach to Floyd's 72, and Conor McGregor's about 5'9", 5'10". Look at Floyd pick off those shots. Now it's important to understand Floyd is doing as if he's coming into Conor, but more importantly, Floyd is actually trying to close the gap. So he's checking out the perimeter of Conor, and he's testing the perimeter. Instead of touch jabbing Conor here, he's walking in on him. But notice that Floyd is also pulling back with his body as he blocks. So with a taller opponent, you start picking off the shots. And Conor wasn't really shooting the shots very strong, so this is an exaggerated way to look at it. So what you can do, again, it's all about angles. Look at Floyd. He just saw the angle, and now he's attacking Conor. Conor he throws a weak jab, and Floyd just counters everything. All right, he's just putting the work in on Conor there. Bobbing and weaving, very important. Bobbing and weaving is a very important thing. It changes up the angle. Now, if Floyd wanted to come up with a shot, he could have done that. Mike Tyson used to bob and weave. Floyd bobs and weaves as well. Okay, and that's something Mikey Garcia, if he wants to, could also commit himself to doing, bobbing and weaving. It's a very good skill for a taller opponent, because once your head or your upper body is moving, you're really a difficult target to hit. And even if you are hit, you're moving usually away from the shot, so it does not matter. Again, Conor's not the best at what he's doing there. Conor doesn't even know what to do. And the thing with it is, when a guy is much taller than you, he has to actually bend to your level. So by you being smaller than him, you can come up with a shot. So the cool thing is, if you stay low and you're small against a taller, bigger opponent, and you actually make yourself smaller, a la Aaron Pryor, even Roberto Duran, and you start throwing shots upwards from coming from a low point to a high, you actually are more effective. Sean Porter does it too. He makes himself small and compact, and he explodes with a shotgun jab, right? So when you make yourself smaller against an opponent, and you also dip and you bob and weave, you dip and all that stuff, and you come up with a shot, you're actually much more effective than if you just stood straight up against a taller opponent. So like for instance, if Mikey Garcia has the skills of bobbing and weaving, or even he doesn't, if he has the skill of dipping into your opponent, kind of a la Canelo or whatever, you're dipping into your opponent and testing their jab, testing the jab, testing the jab. That would be very useful against Errol Spence if he can do that. I don't know if he can. Another thing is, but you gotta practice this. This is not something you do overnight. Bobbing and weaving, and also bending your knees, a la Pernell Whitaker. So all of these things are important when you're facing an opponent. Again, you're changing up the angle all the time. You should be in your stance all the while as you're changing up your angle. So Floyd is just demonstrating that. Now the other thing is to just come down a totally different line your opponent's not really expecting you to be coming down on. So if you're circling your opponent, for example, he's a southpaw, and you're circling him, the orthodox way would be to circle to his right side, right? And then as you're circling, you realize that your opponent is slightly behind you in terms of angle, or you circle such that you're circling a little faster than he is. And then you work your timing, and then you pop him with the jab. Now we saw Luis King Kong Ortiz do it, circling to Christian Hammer's left, and he was able to pop the jab on him. So that's something that, again, when you're a shorter, smaller opponent, by circling your opponent, you actually get position on your opponent before your opponent can come into position, and you can tag him. Usually you try to tag him weak side as quickly as possible. The only thing you got to look out for is the hook. If it's orthodox and you're going to the person's left, then you got to look out for the left hook. If it's unorthodox and you're going to the person's right, you have to look out for the right hook. And again, that's all you got to look out for, because your opponent, he's going to try and cut off the ring on you, which means he's going to try and move laterally to anticipate where you're going. You can always change direction if you want to, and then go back to the direction that you were going at. So most boxers, they do a bounce, or they do a shuffle, and they shuffle in the direction of the opponent, and they may take the opportunity to actually pot shot their opponent at that moment, because they may have position on their opponent, and then it can fire off their lead right if it's a southpaw, or you may fire off your jab if it's an orthodox opponent. So there are many different tricks to the trade. Of course, you're always trying to circle, staying just on the perimeter of your opponent's range. So all of these little things, I think a lot of people don't know. But guys like Mikey Garcia know these things. That's why I was kind of shocked that the coach Eric Bradley doesn't understand that all that Mikey Garcia needs to do to his opponent is actually just turn him. You just need to turn these guys. Same thing with Gennady Golovkin. You got to turn Gennady Golovkin. And Johnny Jacobs turned him. Canelo turned him. And it was a totally different fight. In fact, Canelo had a chance later on in the fight to go toe-to-toe with Gennady Golovkin. You don't go toe-to-toe with a strong opponent early on. A la Andre Ward showed you that against Sergey Kovalev. You do that, you can get dropped. You can get stopped. So obviously you don't do that. And that was the mistake that Chris Algieri made. So you try to change up the angles on your opponent continuously. You try to change the range on your opponent. You try to change the combinations, the height, the reach, that test the reach of your opponent. You want your opponent really actually punching downward if he's tall. You want him punching downward at you, because that's his best chance of missing you, and then you can always punch upward at him. Let me show you another thing. It's all a science to boxing, actually. But all you got to do is watch the tapes of Aaron Pryor, Floyd Mayweather, when he's fighting guys that are much taller than him and bigger than him. You can look at tapes of Pernell Whitaker. Okay, Pernell Whitaker was a southpaw, so it's a little bit different. But for the dipping and the bobbing and wheeling and the rolling, you'll see a lot of that. My point being that you could be right in the pocket against a guy and he can't touch you, mainly because of the angles at which you're approaching him. And if you're changing up the angles continuously as you approach your opponent, it makes it very difficult for them to get to you. Why I was trying to explain that Errol Spence is doing a dangerous thing by just teeing off and using full power on almost every punch is because if he gets countered in between that, it could be very damaging to him. And it doesn't take much to counter him once you're exerting your muscle. Once your muscle's under a certain tension, you could actually cause the muscle to spasm out with a punch that just kind of sends a shock wave through the muscle. And that's what happened with Keith Thurman. That's why I said Errol Spence needs to be careful how he throws his punches, and he shouldn't be predictable in his combinations and his punch selection. Because if he's predictable, I guarantee you Mikey Garcia's gathering all that data. And he's going, you know, Errol Spence is a bit predictable. There's a bunch of other things about Errol Spence that I don't want to talk about right now, but there's a lot of stuff that Errol Spence does that, even though he has good boxing skills and all of that, we know for a fact he's kind of limited in what he does. Good power, good textbook skills, but he's limited in certain things. Now, Floyd Mayweather got so much skill. You know, a lot of people say, you know, Errol Spence versus Floyd Mayweather, what would happen? Well, Floyd would beat him, okay? He just beat him. Outright beat him. And the weirdest thing is, we all know Floyd could push back stronger fighters, right? He pushed back Marcus McDonough. He would push back Errol Spence Jr., okay? And a lot of people, I mean, he's 42 now. I don't know how much boxing he's got back in him, but he's got a lot of knowledge of boxing. But besides Floyd, I mean, Errol Spence has sparred Floyd, which was great for him. But Mikey is not Floyd. He's not Floyd. But Mikey's going to have a systematic approach. Whereas Floyd would circle to Errol Spence's power hand, which would be to his left, which would be to Floyd's right. He would probably circle to Errol Spence's power hand. The textbook way to do it, though, is to circle away from his power hand and avoid his hook. That's basically it. And you stay just on the perimeter of the range. Even if you want to circle the other way, you could do it, but you stay on the perimeter of his range. And it's all about range in boxing. So there's a lot to say about boxing. There's a lot to say about boxing. But let me just leave it at that. It's important to go down. If your opponent thinks you're at a certain angle, that's good. You want to have what's called special effects, which means how your body's positioned kind of helps to deceive the direction or the pathway under which you're coming. And that's something Floyd is just very good at doing. And you think he's actually down a certain line. He's really down another line. That's why I say it's all about angles in boxing. So I've told you guys a mouthful. There's nothing Errol Spence can do to change what he's already they worked and drilled in camp. There's nothing Mikey Garcia can change now what they worked and drilled in camp. This knowledge is not really going to help them if they haven't done it already. So, but there's a ton more things I can tell you, which is why, I give Mikey a sizable amount of chance of beating Errol Spence Jr. I give him a sizable amount of chance. I also give Canelo a huge advantage over Danny Jacobs. Okay, because Canelo has met people like Danny Jacobs before in his career. Danny Jacobs hasn't met anybody like Canelo in his career. Nobody. So, because Danny Jacobs never faced Floyd Mayweather, and Canelo's a much more simpler version of Floyd, but he's definitely a Floyd Mayweather. That's what you're looking at. So, if you wanted to know how Floyd would have done against Triple G, we'll just look at how Canelo did against Triple G. If you wanted to know how Floyd would have done against Erislandy Lar, just watch it how Canelo did against Erislandy Lar. If you wanted to know how Floyd would have done against Austin Trout, we saw how Floyd did against Miguel Cotto. But Canelo was a much more diluted version of that against Miguel Cotto, right? So I'm just saying, Canelo gives you a good indication, gives you a good idea of how Floyd would fare against these bigger fighters. All right? He's not as good as Floyd, but you can see the elements of Floyd in him. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys. As to Sean Porter versus Ugas, we all know Porter's gonna beat him. Porter's gonna beat him. He's gonna beat him bad. Ugas he's gonna be game though. But Porter's gonna stop him. Ugas don't have that kind of strength that he don't have the strength that Porter has. Now, Ugas gonna box pretty good, but Porter's gonna get him. He's gonna get him. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this video. You guys have a good one.